Once, in a bustling city where ambition ran deep and success was measured by the size of one's office and the amount of work done, there lived a powerful businesswoman named Grace Thompson. Grace had climbed the corporate ladder with fierce determination, leaving her modest upbringing far behind. Her days were consumed by board meetings, deadlines, and never-ending projects. Success was her drug, and she craved it more than anything. At home, however, things were different. Her husband, David, was a kind, quiet man with a calm demeanor. He didn't have the sharp business mind that Grace had cultivated, and his life didn't revolve around power suits or business deals. Instead, David was a devoted stay-at-home dad, raising their son, Ethan, with all the love and care he could offer. But Grace, in her relentless pursuit of success, couldn't see the value in that. To her, his job was not a real job. It wasn't important enough. It was lazy. She never hesitated to voice her frustration. "David, you're just wasting your potential," she would snap, her voice dripping with disdain. "I'm out here working my ass off, making a name for myself, and you're at home, playing with toys and baking cookies. What kind of man are you?" David would look at her silently, his eyes sad, but he never argued. He loved her, and he believed in her strength. He also knew that, deep down, Grace had no idea how deeply her words were hurting him. Whenever they would go out in public, Grace made sure to avoid being seen with David. "You'll just embarrass me," she would tell him. "People might think I'm a failure if they know I'm married to someone like you." Her sharp words felt like daggers every time she spoke them. Ethan, their young son, was an innocent observer of this constant tension. He loved his mom, but it was clear to him that she didn't love his dad the same way. Whenever Grace was home, she would spend her time on her phone, checking emails, answering calls, and making plans. She often criticized David in front of Ethan, calling him weak and lazy. Ethan, in turn, began to withdraw from her, spending more and more time with his father. It wasn't that he didn't love his mother, but he couldn't understand why she was always so angry, so disappointed in his dad. The atmosphere in their home was heavy, with unspoken words and unmet needs. One night, after a particularly harsh exchange between Grace and David, Grace went out with colleagues for dinner, leaving Ethan alone at home with his father. The dinner was long, full of laughter and business talk, and when Grace returned home, it was late. She was tired, and her mind was buzzing with the day's accomplishments. As she walked into the house, she noticed Ethan was asleep on the couch, a photo album open beside him. She glanced at the pictures, photos of David and Ethan, of their family trips, and snapshots of the moments that had once brought them all joy. She sat down beside Ethan, her heart heavy. She had been so caught up in her own world that she hadn't even noticed how much Ethan missed his dad when David traveled for work. She hadn't realized how her harsh words had driven a wedge between them, how her inability to respect her husband had affected her son's emotional well-being. Her own actions had created the divide she now regretted. The next day, Grace received an email from her assistant, reminding her of an important meeting with the board of directors for the company she worked for. She arrived early, eager to make a great impression. As she walked through the corridors, she overheard some colleagues talking about the company's owner. "Have you heard? Mr. Thompson is a genius. The new CEO is going to change everything," one of them said. Grace paused, her brow furrowed. "Mr. Thompson?" The name sounded familiar, but it didn't register. She walked into the meeting room, and as she sat down, her gaze was drawn to a portrait on the wall. It was of a man she had seen only a few times before. She recognized the face instantly. It was David, her husband. But why was he on the wall in the company she worked for? Confusion spread through her as she turned to her colleague Jane. "Why is David's picture on the wall?" Grace asked, her voice shaking. Jane smiled and replied, "That's Mr. Thompson, the owner of this company. He's a private man, but his vision for this company is what has shaped it into the success it is today. We're all here because of his leadership." Grace's world stopped. She stared at Jane, her mind racing. Her husband, the quiet, unassuming man who had stayed home to care for their child, was the owner of this entire company? She suddenly realized that David's decision to stay home and raise their son was not out of laziness. He had built an empire behind the scenes while she was focused solely on her career. He had given everything so she could chase her dreams. As the meeting began, Grace's mind kept drifting back to the realization that the man she had disrespected and belittled, was not only a man of great strength, but he had sacrificed so much to support her. She had been blind, so caught up in her own ego, in her own ambition, that she failed to see the true strength of her husband. That evening, Grace returned home, her heart full of regret. David was sitting on the couch, reading a book. Ethan was playing in his room. Grace walked over to David, her eyes filled with emotion. "David, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never saw you for who you truly are. I judged you, I disrespected you, and I pulled you down. I was so wrong." David looked up at her, his eyes soft, as he placed the book aside. "It's okay, Grace. I've always known you're focused on your work, and I never wanted to interfere with your dreams. I've always believed in you." Tears welled up in Grace's eyes. She kneeled before him, holding his hands. "I've been so ashamed of you, and I shouldn't have been. You're not lazy. You're not weak. You're a wonderful father, and you've built something incredible. You're everything I should have seen all along." David smiled gently, pulling her into an embrace. "We all make mistakes, Grace. What matters is that we learn from them." That night, Grace spent time with Ethan. She apologized for the hurtful things she had said, for condemning him to be something he wasn't, for making him feel like he couldn't be proud of his dad. Ethan, with his innocent heart, forgave her immediately, and the three of them spent the evening together, talking and laughing as a family. From that day forward, Grace was a changed woman. She learned to balance her career with her family, to respect David for all that he was, and to cherish every moment she had with both him and Ethan. They found a new rhythm in their home, one where love, respect, and understanding reigned. And in the quiet moments, when Grace would sit with her son and husband, she realized that true success wasn't in the boardrooms or in the deals she had sealed. It was in the love and strength of the family she had almost lost. The stories we've explored today serve as a reminder that relationships require effort, dedication, and a willingness to learn and grow together. If you've been in a similar situation, or have thoughts on what went wrong in these stories, please share them in the comments below. Don't forget to check out another video on relationship advice, where we'll be discussing more tips and strategies for building a strong and healthy partnership.